Picture a morning 50,000 years ago. No alarm, no commute, no inbox. A woman wakes up when the light changes, checks the weather with her own skin, and has, by early afternoon, already finished what most of her day requires. What she does with the other 6 hours is the part nobody talks about, and it's going to make your Tuesday look a little ridiculous. But first, what even was a day before jobs existed? We tend to picture prehistoric life as one long, uninterrupted grind. Wake up, find food, barely survive, collapse, repeat. That image is everywhere. It's in documentaries, in textbooks, in the vague cultural sense that life used to be brutal and short and endlessly laborious. Here's the problem. It's mostly wrong. Anthropologists studying modern hunter-gatherer societies, groups living in ways genuinely comparable to our ancient ancestors, have measured this directly, not guessed, measured. Time use studies among groups like the Hadza in Tanzania and the hoansi in the Kalahari consistently show something that should not be possible by modern assumptions. Somewhere between 15 and 20 hours a week spent on actual subsistence activity. Hunting, gathering, fetching water, building shelter, that's it. That's the whole workload. Compare that to the standard 40-hour week most of you are reading this during a break from. The math is not close. Our ancestors, by this measure, were working less than half of what we consider a normal week, and doing it without refrigeration, without supermarkets, without any of the infrastructure that makes our version of survival so much easier on paper. So what filled the rest of it? This is the part that gets skipped, and it's the actually interesting part. Let's talk about food first, because it's the fastest way the myth falls apart. In resource-rich environments, gathering enough calories for a day might take a few hours, sometimes less. Plant foods, tubers, nuts, and shellfish in coastal regions were often abundant and predictable. Hunting large game was less reliable, but it wasn't a daily requirement. Meat could be shared, stored, or simply skipped for a day without catastrophe. The image of constant, desperate foraging doesn't match the data. Food, for a lot of the year in a lot of environments, was closer to a morning task than an all-day obsession. Shelter and tools followed the same pattern. A shelter, once built, didn't need daily reconstruction. A spear point, once made, lasted. Maintenance mattered, but maintenance is not the same as constant labor. The ancient day had bursts of necessary work, not an unbroken shift. So the hours open up. And here's where it gets genuinely interesting, because what filled them wasn't idleness. It was something we've almost completely forgotten how to prioritize. Social time. Ethnographic observation of hunter-gatherer groups shows enormous amounts of the day spent on conversation, storytelling, gossip, teaching children, resolving disputes, and simply sitting together. Anthropologists have a term for this, unstructured social time, and it isn't a side effect of having nothing better to do. It's understood now as essential labor of a different kind, maintaining alliances, transmitting knowledge, keeping the group cohesive. In a world with no police, no courts, no written law, the social fabric had to be maintained constantly, in person, through hours of talk that looked to an outside observer like doing nothing at all. Then there's craft, beadwork, tool refinement, decoration of objects that had no survival function whatsoever. Archaeological sites are full of ornamental items that took real time to make and served no purpose except being beautiful or meaningful. That's not the behavior of a species with no spare hours. That's the behavior of a species with plenty of them, choosing to spend some on things that simply felt good to make. And then, rest. Actual, unapologetic rest. Time use studies note significant portions of the day spent resting, napping, or simply not doing anything task-oriented at all. Not collapsing from exhaustion, resting because the workload of the day was already done. Here's the twist that really should stop you for a second. If ancient humans were working fewer hours than we do, using simpler tools, with none of our technology, then the story we tell ourselves about progress, that we've been steadily working our way toward more leisure and comfort, is backwards. We didn't invent free time. In a lot of measurable ways, we lost some of it. So what actually happened? Where did the hours go? The honest answer starts with agriculture. Roughly 10,000 years ago, farming changed the calculation completely. Crops need constant tending. Fields need clearing, planting, weeding, protecting from animals, harvesting on a strict seasonal deadline that doesn't care whether you're tired. Farming produced more food per unit of land, but it demanded far more labor to get there, and it demanded that labor on a schedule set by the plants, not by the person doing the work. With farming came surplus. With surplus came storage and ownership and the very new idea that some people could control resources that other people needed. That's the moment the modern relationship to labor really begins. Once someone else controls the food supply, working for them stops being optional. The job, in the sense we understand it today, a fixed obligation to labor for someone else's benefit in exchange for access to survival, is a genuinely recent invention. It's thousands of years old, not hundreds of thousands. Which means the exhausting wall-to-wall work week most of you are living through isn't some ancient inheritance clawed up from our animal past. It's a relatively new arrangement, built on top of agriculture, then intensified again by industrialization, then intensified again by everything that came after it. So what does all of this actually tell us? It tells us the constant, grinding busyness so many people treat as simply the human condition isn't that at all. It's a specific historical arrangement, a few thousand years old, layered on top of a much older, much slower rhythm that our bodies and brains were actually built for. Long stretches of necessary effort, followed by long stretches of talk, craft, rest, and each other. Which brings us back to that woman, 50,000 years ago, finished with the essential part of her day by early afternoon. She wasn't unusually lucky. She wasn't living in some rare, abundant paradise. She was living something closer to the human default, a rhythm we spent hundreds of thousands of years perfecting and only a few thousand years ago started dismantling. Your Tuesday isn't ancient. It isn't natural. It isn't even, in the long view, particularly normal. It's just the newest arrangement in a very, very old story. And somewhere underneath the alarm, the commute, and the inbox, your body is still quietly running on her schedule.